Well, it has been an absolute wild ride this season. This expansion in general, I mean, Dragonflight's been absolutely outstanding. Certainly the best start to any expansion I have experienced. And along the way, the amount of fun we've had in Mythic Plus has been commensurate. If you haven't seen this expansion, we have started a new series where people are submitting footage that they find either funny or somehow interesting in some way to me. We're reviewing the cream of that crop and making specific videos on it. It's been honestly like the most fun thing I've ever done on YouTube. And I hope that it'll continue to be something that we can do because I feel like it's not only funny and entertaining, but it's also something that we could all learn from. And that's always been like core pillars of this channel's purpose: humor and enjoyment, but also learning and progression. So I'd love to continue that into next season. This season, the way we're closing it out is we're going to take a look at all 16 of them that I have in a playlist. I initially said that I wanted to do a March Madness style bracket to kind of pit each of them against each other. And as I was brainstorming that, I couldn't really come up with like good ways to seed them. And then I started to think like the March Madness tournament on its own takes like 3 weeks. I just didn't really think like we had enough time to do this properly. I felt like we'd be rushing through each game. But instead, what we're going to do is I have a poll of all 16 keys, and you are going to vote for the top 4 out of those. Then whatever wins is going to go into an actual like Final Four style tournament, and then we'll do the actual voting on that. And then we have plenty of time before the end of the season to give them each a few days, publicize them each individually, and we'll do like a looted bracket for the ones that don't win, and then we'll have a 1, 2, 3, and 4 funniest keys. I think it'd be a fun way to engage on some of these things, but also just to relive some of them as well, because honestly, there is some hilarious moments here. So I'm just going to list them in order on the straw poll that they are in the playlist. That playlist will be down below, as well as the voting. It'll be down below. But let's go ahead and take a look at them all now, because I'm sure maybe some of you guys missed some, or maybe some of you guys just forgot, because there are some ones that stretch back so far that even I forgot about some of this stuff. So this is the first one in the entire playlist, and this is what really made me want to do the playlist as it is. This is actually my own key, but it's only a 16 at the time. This was one of the first weeks of the season. For whatever reason, stuff like this here happens. I was going to say, beginning of the season is always fun. This guy doesn't seem to understand. I don't think he left on purpose, obviously, because if he did, that would be ridiculous. He doesn't seem to know what's happening either. People just like leave the group and then they're like typing in chat, confused why they left. Actually wipe to that, but then the guy just like invites them back and we continue. Definitely something I've never seen before, but it continues to happen, as you're gonna see here. Kill the shields. What just happened now? We've been removed from the group. Dude, what is going on right now, dude? Is this a bug? At some point in this season, there was like an actual issue on Blizzard's end. Somebody pointed out what they believe probably happened. Some kind of issue with a macro, or I don't know, something like that. We still don't know for sure. It's possible that it was something on Blizzard's end, but I've never saw it happen other than with this specific group and this specific druid. And the thing is, you could actually see him like use a spell, and then the second he does, I get kicked. So you can watch his character down here. And as soon as he casts that animation, I get removed from the group. So that's why people were thinking that it was somehow related to that. This is the first one that we actually had submitted, and this is from Cop's live stream. As you can see, this one is just hilarious. This is just tickles my fancy. Whenever I see something like this, it just immediately makes me laugh. Like Hank literally standing in the dead center with both beams just full channeling. And then like the mechanics happening at the same time just absolutely cracks me up. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying like physical humor, where it almost looks like, you know, you couldn't write some of this stuff. Like if you did this on purpose, it would be just as funny as if it happened naturally, and we're always assuming it's happening naturally in these lower keys. So this is the first one we actually got submitted, and this is what really kicked off the playlist. If it wasn't for this, there probably wouldn't have been a series in the first place. Now this one is absolutely legendary, and if you guys haven't seen it, if like you haven't seen any of these and you only have time to watch like 15 minutes, this is the one to watch. It's just got everything. I almost can't summarize it, but it's the one with Pringle, the guy who was talking about being high the whole time and dying a ton, and then the tank named Studmaster, who is just doing like almost everything you could do wrong as a tank and then blaming others for it. Like the guy can't afford to repair and stuff like that. Like the title is certainly accurate. This group shows everything bad in Mythic Plus bugging low keys. If you haven't seen it, you should. This one was unbelievably funny to me at the time. I think it was just kind of like a new player, which I do feel bad about. I just can't help but laugh at this kind of thing no matter where it's coming from. So we kill the first mini boss in quarter stars here, and then somebody activates the trap. I think it's clear that the tank has no idea what the trap is, or completely unaware that it's been activated, one or the other, but people are trying to alert him to that. So we're just like over here without the tank, and he's now running back. And then that causes like a really strange moment where we have killed all 3 mini bosses now, but we only killed 2 enforcers. So he believes that we need to continue killing enforcers. We already have count, like the rest of the dungeon is a joke anyway, but like the group here is like spamming him, telling him boss, 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 and they're like saying WTF, and he goes, no, mini. Like, it's almost like just pure comedy, like mini boss instead of regular boss. But yeah, we're just gonna pull an enforcer at 100% count for absolutely no reason. And then I kind of end up trolling him a little bit. And because of that, we convince him to pull even further, even more trash over count. The guy goes, "We have count. Are you guys on drugs?" This was at a time when I was like literally only playing these alts just to find these hilarious moments. And I felt like this was like one of the best ones for sure. This one's all about the chat, so it might be hard to see, but basically it's like the perfect example of everything possibly bad about chatting in Mythic Plus, especially like in lower keys in general. We see so much just social issues that proliferate these problems. People are basically like flaming the healer for dying, and it's spiteful, grievous, fortified. So I mean, that's like one of the hardest weeks, especially in Ruby life pools. And they're basically just flaming him, and he's now like his confidence is like completely squashed. And then the weirdest part is like this guy is like just spamming, and I believe that's Korean, like actually just like typing walls of text in Korean, a language completely non-native to the region that he's playing the game in. And I still don't understand that. Like people in the chat were trying to translate it for him, but he's just like spamming so much stuff. But apparently it's just like pure hatred, like just straight out insults. Even the people in the chat are like, "I don't know what brother man is saying," and the other guy says, "Bro, we can't understand you." Dot, dot. Whenever you see dot 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 from a demon hunter from Azrael, you know it's probably going to be a bad time. This one I really like because I feel like this was like the first example of one that we could really learn from. Like all the other stuff was pretty obvious to not do these things. But what's going on in this key, it's like, it's clear to me that there's a lot of learning that is still needed. And especially with Court of Stars, it was really crazy all season because people were either just like overthinking it or putting themselves in situations where they just should not be in. And I think that's because of how the dungeon is laid out. Like at the high end, once you have like a basic understanding of where the patrols are and what the mobs look like, you know exactly what you should and shouldn't pull. But when you're like new to the dungeon, you're seeing all these moving parts like the patrols and everything, you kind of find yourself in an unenviable situation where you're letting the dungeon play you instead of you commanding what's being pulled and how you're navigating through the dungeon. It was like super common in Court of Stars. Like we have the tank basically like sprinting down the stairs with the Guardian. Obviously we have like a Holy Priest struggling to keep up. Pretty like immobile comp, honestly. Balanced Druid, Marksman Hunter, and Demo Warlock or something like that. So he just like sprints out here at like 20% health, seemingly no backup plan to survive here, and just dies. We actually get the res off, but it's like way too late. And then the guy says, "Can y'all interrupt?" It's like, that's why this is titled. This is why low Mythic Plus pugging is harder than higher keys. Then we do like more stuff like this where we're like fighting. We use like the Bazaar goods, and there's like a patrolling enforcer just spawns like right on top of them and stuff like that. So this is like literally why lower keys are harder, because you have people who are just unable to process the mistakes they make. They don't necessarily understand like what they're doing wrong, or they don't have the experience level for it. And it's not the dungeon that's difficult, but it's just difficult enough that like these kind of mistakes are completely going to bankrupt you. Like you'll never survive this. Like this is not ever going to work. He gets tilted before the key even starts. I'll definitely never forget this key. This is like a shockingly scary example of the community and like maybe even like the social problems people have in this game that really cause issues that just aren't there, like that just don't exist. Like nothing Blizzard can do with like a fixes or tuning of the difficulty of the dungeon could ever change this guy's attitude and this guy's eventual disbanding of this group. Yeah, so this is a 10 Temple of the Jade Serpent, and the shaman dies like a single time basically. He dies to Spiteful, and the healer's like kind of struggling a bit, but he goes, "I really feel like leaving this key." And if you see on the screen there, we are so like, we just started this key. Like literally it's just starting, and this guy's talking about leaving the key before really anything happened. Like these 2 deaths in a 10, if they're gonna tilt you this bad, then you probably need to take a break. But yeah, he goes, "You just fucking up all my CDs, tank. I died 3 times because of fucking dot." The guy says, "Why can't you heal?" Healer reminds him, "You died to melee from the Spiteful." And then he leaves, and key disbands like, what's that, like 4 minutes in, you know what I mean? It's just silly. Here's another really good example of behavioral stress that is being placed on players. And like the title says, this is a surefire way to disband your group. Like if you do this in a key, almost, I'd say like 99% of the time, expect the person that you are targeting to be tilted to the point where they cannot continue and that the group will end. But yeah, so we go over here to the left, and we're pulling the pack with the Void Spawn. Obviously not what you want to be doing anyway, but it's a Bear Druid. Now there was some debate about the fact that the guy is normally not a Bear Druid. His highest key as a tank was pretty low, so it was actually like a relatively progression key for him, but he just dies. And honestly, this is like one of the hardest packs in the game if you're going to be pulling the Void Spawn. And then after that, people start to really get on his case. The Azrael Demon Hunter yet again says, "Tank, use CD, bro." That's just great advice, right? Like that's what I mean by this. Frankly, just like not productive. Like, you know what I mean? Like if the guy doesn't know to use CDs, I mean, it's just not going to help anybody. That's just never going to help. Then he continues on. He says, "Lol, heal, you called called a tank IO DPS. Why? I guess his point was like he invited a guy who's never really tanked before. And we took a look at that here, and it was like, I don't know. To be honest, like I would be fine with this guy in a 14. Like it's really not. If you can do like a higher key as a DPS, then you can definitely tank a lower key. He doesn't die there because of his CD usage. Just to put it that way, like he did something stupid by pulling that trash. Oh yeah, but this part's really funny because then the demon hunter just like runs off on his own and starts trying to solo the pack, and he just dies to it. Meanwhile, the rest of the group's back here still killing the other mobs. But yeah, now we're down here like relatively hard pack, and he dies again. And at this point, the dude's probably just got zero interest, right? Like if the group's attacking him and his validity in the key, then I don't expect him to stay. I really don't. And that's just a tried and true method to tilt your group. That's the thing that's hard about Puggy, man, because like people are attacking each other. You're meant to all be on the same team, but when you start to like attack each other instead of the enemies that you're supposed to be fighting, then it's just impossible to succeed. So I remember this one's funny because the servers were down one day and people were just like shooting me keys on stream that day. We were supposed to be streaming keys, but the servers were just like down the whole day and we just never got to. Just a bunch of like small mistakes along the way. A couple things that are strange, like he dies and instead of running back through the open gates, he runs all the way back around the side. But there was some kind of like bug, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what happens here, but they kill an enforcer and it doesn't actually spawn the mini boss. So they basically said like, all right, that's fine. We'll just kill the boss with the mini boss, which is completely not possible. They even consume bloodlust to do it though. But then like some really interesting stuff happens because they need to, like, in order to finish the dungeon, they need to figure this out, right? So the druid goes up and grabs the mob because the boss hasn't reset yet. But he does this without anybody else realizing it. And somebody else just pulled another enforcer thinking like the only solution to this would be to just pull another enforcer and then that's how you would spawn it. But because the boss isn't there, you can just run up and grab that guy. So now we have the situation here where like we have the mini boss jumping over here, but the enforcer's out and people don't realize it. So it just kills the healer. It just, yeah, it causes the whole mess. Also have your like patented ping pong in the fire. And so just a bunch of small mistakes, but that one was just really, really funny to me. That there was like a bug and then they thought they could like actually pull the boss without like killing the mini bosses first or finding some other solution to that. Now this one was an absolute gem and really it's one of one. You'll never see this situation again. Probably if you watch this now, you still won't understand what happens. At a glance, it looks like somebody just dies to threat and then people get tilted by it and move on. But it's like so much more nuanced than that. It's so much more interesting than that. It's actually like a sub 1 minute key because of that. But like watch it again if you haven't seen this one. It's really, 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 really unique. See that this is the tank here. Here are the enemies obviously that you have to pull in order to do the rest of the dungeon. And watch, he is actually just going to heroic leap right over them. Slow it down to the point where he gets off his mount and he is like, I mean, that is insanely close to these enemies. I have no idea how they haven't aggroed at this point, but here's the heroic leap and he just jumps right over them. But then, yeah, like they haven't aggroed. So the priest just walks right into them. Somehow they still haven't aggroed. So maybe this is just normally what happens here. He actually runs behind them before they finally aggro and then just like instantly almost dies. And that's pretty much the key. Like literally that's it. Despite the fact that this causes no real issue. Like you can literally just come back and do it again. You've not even gone a minute into the dungeon at this point. Good example of people just making keys harder for themselves than Blizzard is. We have the Strife and Peril encounter in Temple of Jade Serpent. It has some mechanics that obviously if you don't do them right, it can be like a little bit of a longer fight. There's a bunch of discussion in this video about how this happens, but basically the mobs continue to go immune. It happens like multiple times. This guy just decides to leave over it. Like he tried to like instruct the rogue on how to do it right, which I'm not even convinced it was the rogue's fault, honestly, at the time. I think there's like one death at the time. They have 20 minutes left coming out of that boss split. It's a 16. This is like an easy upgrade, right? So this guy literally just hearts out of an easy upgrade because, I don't know, he believes he's like morally superior than the rest of the group and they don't deserve to play with him anymore. Like this is what I'm talking about when I say people are like making keys harder. This one is like actually crazy. This is the most toxic I have ever seen a single player be in a single Mythic Plus. Like this is kind of wild. But it's another great example of like what you shouldn't do in a key though, because the guy's like, no levers, right? And this guy who's ultimately going to be the huge issue in the key, he says, if you play like some Braden dead, I wouldn't count on it. My patience with stupid people is below 0. It's like, okay, all right, see you later then. Pretty much disband at that moment, right? Like there's no way we're finishing the key with that comment made. But like here's like ultimately why it's crazy though. Like we have the cats and they're double enraged. They jump over here and they just one-shot the guy. Like it's because both people are stacked, so they kill the evoker and they barely don't kill the hunter. But yeah, double enraged cats jumping, really, really, really dangerous. Obviously, if they weren't stacked, maybe they survive it, but this is actually like a hunter who's like way overqualified for this key. I don't know if he's just here to practice something or here to help somebody, but then the guy brings that up. He's like, you have 20 court in time and you don't know how to set a binding shoot or trink shoot in rage. Mind blowing. I don't know if you really think like somebody in a 15 is going to pull that off. We're talking about it in the comment section of this video. Like it's possible and it would be like an absolutely insane play. Like if you saw somebody do that, you'd be like, whoa, they're like the most skilled player ever. But yeah, he just continues to like go on and on about that. Just because you have 7 dispels done doesn't mean you dispelled the cat that killed you. These types of attitudes just, it's impossible. Like, it really is. And when you act like this, you have, I just can't imagine what that guy's success rate must be, because like if you act like this, it's just immediately, the key is just immediately over. Then we have another like pretty benign one. One of the DPS die in the fight. The tank just finishes it. But then the guy who died is like, you needed to battle res me there. And unfortunately, like probably not the best response. The guy says, I needed to save my holy power to heal myself. It was too risky to battle res you. But you don't ever say that to a DPS. Let's put it that way. But then like instead of just actually playing and moving on, they're just typing about it for the rest of the key, and it gets super petty. If people could just move on from this, there wouldn't be a single issue with this. Like, it's so not a problem whatsoever. He says, if you don't like my play, then you should play as a tank. He goes, I do. I play Death Knight tank, and I tank better than you with 360 item level. And then he leaves. Okay, cool. TLDR, don't ever tell a DPS that they're less important than one word of glory. Now, this one is easily one of my favorite keys ever. Like, not even just in this playlist, but this kind of thing just cracks me up. I cannot help but always laugh at this type of thing. We're doing the Azir skip, and the priest just puts levitate on people. So they just killed them. I mean, right? Like, he just killed this whole group. People are just floating down to their death. I just love watching that. It's just so, because you can't do anything about it. You'd have to react like the second you noticed it, and even then you'd probably still fall to your death. But yeah, it's not over there. Then people are just like jumping down, falling to their death there. Hunter just like disengages, barely survives, but at the same time, the evoker's off, flying over that platform again. Oh, this kind of stuff just cracks me up, dude. I cannot help but laugh at this. This is easily like the thing that makes me laugh the most. Here's another hilarious moment from my stream as well. It was my key. I invited these people to the group, and then one of the people put their key in instead of mine, and it was lower than mine. I'm not doing it, but I've never seen that happen before. I don't know if you guys have, but I have definitely never seen somebody basically like hijack a key. And we talked about like all the different permutations of how this could happen. My initial thought that it was some kind of a mistake, but people were saying like, there's no way you can make this mistake. Like, you have to put the key in and wait and then click yes. You know what I mean? So that guy did it. Like, I hadn't even done like a ready check yet. So like that guy did it well before anybody was ready. And I'm like, I'm not doing this key. That's not what I put the group for. I was willing to just go do my key with the same group, but they didn't want to continue. And then this is the most recent one. Cop submitted this just the other day. Absolutely hilarious moment here where the tank just like drags the boss all the way through like 100 and some yards of ice. I have no idea what he's doing over there. This is right after the demon hunter just like walks off, like literally just runs to the edge and walks off. And the tank's just like taking him all the way over there. There's a bunch of really funny moments in this key, and if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. More die to fall damage and stuff like that. This key is just, it's got a lot of greatness too. So that's all 16 of them in the playlist. It was really fun just to see some other perspectives too. It helped me actually probably become a better player myself. But now we are going to vote on the 4 out of the 16 that you believe are the funniest. And again, they're just listed in the order of the playlist. Timestamps in this video. You could leaf through them if you want to see my quick summary of them, or you could just go to the playlist and watch them yourself. So I've chosen my 4 here. It's a tough choice, honestly. One I didn't pick that I was really close to picking is that the guy who puts his key in instead of mine. That is just so strange. But place the votes now, and then you guys will add to it. So links down below. Not exactly sure how long we'll give this, but maybe a week, something like that. And then after that, we'll be releasing community posts on the channel, pitting the 4 that win, the 4 highest vote getters, that is, in seeded order. Like the number 1 highest vote getter is the 1 seed, and the 4th is the 4 seed. That'll be on the channel's community page. So thank you for watching, guys. Hope you have enjoyed this. I'm going to be doing this again all in season 2. So please, especially early in the season, send me your runs. It is just a gold mine out there, and honestly, it's some of the most fun content I've ever produced, and it's just really something that you could find in the darkness when you don't expect to. So thank you for watching. We will see you guys in the next one.